Brittany Bush. I teach in the Sioux City Community School District. I spent 6 years as an early childhood special education teacher where we had 10 children who were typically developing integrated with 10 children who have special needs for a full day, everyday program. So with a wide variety of disabilities. And now I just moved into an instructional coach position, which has given me a brand new lens to the education field. And so we're excited to share this presentation with you.
And I am Angela Fenwick. I'm an instructional coach in the Sioux City School District as well. We're going to start with just a little disclaimer. As we talk about trauma, sometimes that activates people to have emotions and trigger sometimes our own past or things that we've experienced. So please take care of yourself. If you need to take a break or listen to the presentation, we completely understand. And if you need someone to talk to afterwards, we are available. So we are going to talk just a little bit about what trauma is. We're not going to spend a lot of time in this because I was hoping, as it happened, people would speak about it before us. So a lot of the information that we have about trauma came from the ACEs study on adverse childhood experiences that took place in the 90s. There were about 17,000 participants, and of those participants, about 1 out of 5 had experienced 3 or more adverse childhood experiences. And what we know that means is that more adverse childhood experiences that people have been through, the bigger effect that it has on their development and their bodies, mental and cognitive. What basically will lead to later in life, sometimes disease, disability, and somebody gave some statistics earlier, even on early death. What we know that with children that are in these high stress environments, our bodies are designed to typically handle about 20 minutes of stress. And what a lot of our kids that we're seeing in trauma are dealing with stress on a constant basis. So this puts them into a system of toxic stress, which actually changes their brain development. Darcy showed some slides earlier on the difference between your typically developing brain and somebody who's had some complex trauma. So what we know is that this can impact their behavior. I actually put on here that trauma can create humans, but what I want to say is it can create responses in humans. Typically what we talk about is hyperarousal. Kids who are all over the place, breaking things, big behaviors, hitting, spitting, kicking. Those behaviors are very easy to recognize, and we know those kids, and a lot of us are here to find out how to help them. But we don't want to dismiss the fact that some of the responses that our students have are hypoarousal, which are students that are more in the freeze mode. They're detached. They almost blend in. We don't notice them as much because they look more like you're typically developing, but they're really not there with us in the classroom. And we have to be just as concerned about those students as we are the ones that are destroying our classroom or hitting or kicking. We really want everyone to not assume or compare traumas. A lot of times when I'm in the classroom and we're talking about students who are struggling with behaviors, I hear things like, well, they come from a really good home. That is great. We want all of our kids to have as much support as possible, but that doesn't mean that our students haven't been through trauma or are not impacted by something. Trauma isn't stored in our brain necessarily like a memory. So you might have a student who experienced some form of trauma at birth, and they won't have a memory of that particular incident, but it is stored in their body, and their body is still going to respond to that trauma. So it's not our job to be detectives and figure out what students' trauma is, but to treat all students as we're going to assume that there's trauma, or we're going to assume that they need to respond like there's trauma. As Darcy stated earlier, all kids respond well to trauma-informed practice, so that's good. It doesn't matter if our kid has trauma or not, because the things we're going to put in place are going to benefit them. And that kind of just goes back to the brain. Our brains respond based on the experiences that we have, and we can't change that. What we do know is that kids who experience high rates of stress, their brain is built to handle that stress. Their brain is literally built to survive in that environment. When they move into our classroom, we ask them to activate a new set of skills. I need you to focus. I need you to sit down. And what happens is they're not socially developed to be able to handle that, and that actually pushes them kind of into that downstairs brain. So their brain is actually designed perfectly for the environment that they grew up in. It's not designed perfectly necessarily for the classroom that we have them in. Okay. So, trauma, chaos, powerless, helplessness. We have all been through some form of trauma. What happens with our younger ones is they're more vulnerable to this trauma. The younger you are, the more you have to rely on adults to help you through things. So if I'm an infant and I'm in an environment where there's constant screaming and yelling and fighting, I have no way of protecting myself or creating safety. My adult in my life needs to do that. So we have to assume, or we know, that these younger kids are more vulnerable to impacts of this type of trauma on their brain. And it literally changes the way that their brain is developed. It can happen at any age, and again, the younger they're more vulnerable. And so let's go to brain states. Okay. So we're going to talk about brain states. We've talked about it a little bit earlier. Dan Siegel also has a lot of good information on brain states. We use a lot of conscious discipline in our preschool classrooms. Conscious discipline is good for pre-K to high school. There's a lot of very good information in there on brain states, and I highly recommend it. Understanding brain states will help you understand kids in trauma. Thank you. So we like to give like our little Dan Siegel presentation on brain states. When we are talking through our presentation, we're going to be talking about different parts of the brain. So our students who are in their survival brain, this is the bottom part of their brain or their base. Our brain is built from the bottom to the top. So in that bottom brain state, which we call like the downstairs brain, that's survival behavior. Your fight, flight, freeze. These are your students who are going to throw things, kick, spit, hit. There's usually little verbal at that point in time because that prefrontal cortex is shut off. So these are the big behaviors that you see. As you move up, you move into that threat center or the emotional brain. This is where you'll have students that are cussing, yelling, more emotional states than necessarily that physical. And then that top part of the brain, that prefrontal cortex, that is hopefully where we all are now, learning and thinking and talking. The problem is for our youngest students, it takes us to build our entire brain to about 24 to 28 years old. So when we're dealing with 4 and 5-year-olds, we know that even if there's not trauma, they may just not be able to access this part of their brain because it hasn't developed yet. And so we have to be understanding of that when we're asking them to use reasoning and to problem solve. Thank you. That they may have not accessed that top of their brain yet. Kids do well when they can. We're watching a little documentary after this, and this is a big statement by Ross Greene. And it's true whether we're children or whether we're adults, but we do well when we can. But for our students, the way that we create those neural pathways in our brain is what occurs over and over and over again becomes our neural pathway. So if I'm trying to learn how to share, and every time I hit a student, they give me their toy, that becomes my neural pathway. So I know that I go hit, I get my toy. What we need to do as teachers is understand that for a student to stop and change this behavior, we actually have to create a new neural pathway. We have to make something that's easier than hitting and getting the toy to create a new response with that child, and it's got to be successful over and over and over again. And so that's how we know that it's not going to be one time. That's why we know behavior charts don't work, because behavior charts don't give us that skill set to stop, pause, and use a new skill. So we really want you to kind of shift your mindset as we talk today to really be thinking, instead of when we're looking at these students that are having these big behaviors, we don't want you thinking, how do I stop this behavior? How do I make this child different? But we really want you thinking, what do I need to do, or what do I need to change the response that the student is having to this situation? And then I know this was talked a little bit about earlier, but trauma takes place in relationships. Our younger students, our most vulnerable students, most of their trauma has taken place within the relationship in their lives. And so relationships are scary. But for us to change the behaviors that these students are having, it has to also take place in relationship. So that has to be our core, our number one thing, is to be in true relationship with these students. And then we can begin to change those neural pathways and begin to build a healthier brain system for them.
Yes, so that is the research. We quickly summed it up, and now we're the practitioners, right? We're the ones in the classrooms, the teachers in the rooms, we're the ones experiencing that behavior, that trauma, all of those things. So we set up this presentation in a form that allows you to see this very specific, intricate strategies that we're using to support kiddos who have experienced trauma. So we're going to do it through a lens of one of my students who came to our classroom. So we're going to kind of speak through this, and you're going to see this picture unfold of how this all took place. So we had a little friend. He was in what we call our community sites. He displayed very big behavior. So he was a room clearer. He sent multiple staff to the ER with bites, and he was a yeller, a shouter. They had to clear the room frequently. He had very, very big meltdowns. So we get a phone call, and he needs a different placement. Okay, so the staff is saying, we can't support this. This is such big behavior. And we were sitting in our office one day, not prepared for this. We hadn't received the call yet. And one of our EA consultants comes in, has big emotion. She's like, no one should have to do this. This is crazy. And we're sitting there like, but someone does. Yep, so so immediately our red flags go up. My boss says we got to place him on Monday. He was removed on Thursday. So we had a lot of emotions too, right? I mean, when you hear of a room clearer, a biter, physical aggression, you're like, oh boy, this is going to be hard. And we go in, and my heart starts racing. And I know they're going in my classroom that I'm coaching, and I have to prepare that teacher, that staff, and the rest of the kids in that classroom in 2 days, and hopefully over the weekend. So I just want to make you aware that adults feel fear too. We're scared of them coming into our classrooms too, because like Val shared, we also have emotional responses to that behavior. So we're going to go through the story, but I do want to say we put all of these interventions in place, and in a week and a half, we went from a 90-minute safe space restraint to nothing for 10 weeks straight. So I'm telling you, I've done this, these things work, and kids are successful, and if you went into the profession to change lives, this is what will do it. So we're just going to walk you through the specific strategies we use. This is for all of the classroom, not just this one particular student, but these are strategies you can put forward for all students in your room. So we did title our presentation. We wrestled back and forth with the title, but it is called Love and Structure. We learned that you can't separate them. They have to go together. We can't have just a really loving classroom that has no boundaries and no structure. We can't just have structure without kids feeling like they can be cared for and are valuable. So Angela's going to speak to the love piece, and I'll speak to the structure piece.
All right, so I'm speaking to the love piece because this is my favorite part, but I do feel that this is the foundation, and I'm going to talk about just some really simple things, but they're so important. So when the student was coming into the classroom, the one thing we wanted to focus on is we wanted to make sure that this teacher welcomed this child in. Despite how afraid that she was that this child was going to hurt other kids, destroy her classroom, we wanted this child to know that they belong. And so one of the first simple things you can do when you have a student is find something in common. And it sounds so simple, but we have to be intentional about it. And it's one of our basic human needs. And what we know is when we belong to a group and we feel like we belong to that group, we are more likely to follow those social norms. We're more likely to change the way that we think and we feel about things to match the social norms in that group, which is what we want students to do. We want them to learn new skills and strategies. And so our first thing has to be that they think they're important as every student in the classroom, despite their behaviors when they walk in that classroom. And so it's important that when they walk in, that we're saying to them, we are so excited that you're here every single day. And when they do have a mistake, because they're going to, and when they destroy something or they have a meltdown, that we're saying to them, it's okay, because we're going to help you. Our entire class is here, and we're going to help you because you belong to us.
And even when coaching this classroom, I did say, here's what so-and-so likes. Can we find 2 or 3 students that we know also like those same things? So the moment that we enter the classroom, he has kids he can immediately connect to, and they can connect to him. So not just amongst the adults, but amongst the peers too.
And I just want you to think, so I always share, I'm a Notre Dame fan. So when I go to the grocery store and I see somebody with the Fighting Irish or Notre Dame, like we are already friends. I already know them, they are my buddy. That's what we need kids to feel like when they walk into the classroom, is that connection that we have with people who went to the same college as us, or people who like the same football team as us. We have that connection to them almost immediately when we see them sharing that common experience. So we want to create that for our students in the classroom, which will lead us into seeking a connection. As social human beings, we need connection. We as adults are looking for connection all of the time. A lot of times we talk about how we are connected. Social media is ended because we are all walking around kind of with like phones in our faces. We are all seeking a connection. As we talked about earlier, it takes one person. It takes one human to make the difference in the life of a child or an adult. But that takes us being in relationship with them and loving them unconditionally, no matter what their behavior is. It's easier when I think that behavior that they're having, that is just a sign of their pain. And the bigger their behavior, the bigger their pain must have been. And that makes my heart want to connect and want to love them. What we ask our teachers to do, and what we ask for this particular student, is connection, touch, playfulness, presence, and eye contact. Some easy ways to do this with our younger students is just thinking about even like the games like peekaboo, or I used to play with my daughter this like round and round goes the little bear, 1 step, 2 step, and a tickle under there. It's so simple, but it's so meaningful to give them 5 minutes of your day and just let them know you mean something to me. We look for this in our relationships that we have with other humans, in our relationships with boyfriends, girlfriends. But this, one, it leads to higher grade states. Connection leads to higher grade states, which is where we want our kids. This is where we're thinking and learning. So if we know connection leads there, that's where we want to be. But also, it has to be intentional. You can't assume it's happening, because when I've assumed it's happening, it isn't. So you want to plan these situations, honestly, with all of our kids. But I really, really want you to be intentional when a kid is having a hard time, that we're going over and we're finding ways to get down at their level, sit with them in that moment, have eye contact, be playful, and just love them for a little bit. And that's going to help our students kind of move to a higher brain state, but it builds that relationship that they need to be healthier.
And that was one of the first things I remember my college professor here said, if there's anything you value more in the classroom, it's that you are at the door, at child level, greeting kids as they come in. And I'm going to greet you, I'm going to notice you. Let's say you had swimming practice yesterday, I'm going to say, how was it? How was that birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese? And they know I noticed, I remembered. And their life brings value to me, and I bring value to them. So that when this little boy walks in that door, there is a teacher sitting on their knees saying, I'm not above you, I'm ready to connect with you, welcome.
Just to add to that, statistically, I read if you have a greeting in place every morning, it decreases behaviors in your classroom by 20%. So, big greetings. So this one is hard. We talked earlier, know your triggers and know how to regulate. This is easier said than done. We had a video, but we can't play it, so I can tell you a little bit about it, but it's just a quick little commercial that was done, and a kid is coloring on the wall, and his dad comes in and starts screaming at him, don't color on the wall. And later in the video, he's coloring with his sister, and his sister colors on his paper, and he starts screaming at his sister, don't color on my paper. And then the next scene, dad comes in and says, you forgot, please don't color on the wall, here's some paper. and later his sister colors on his paper and he says, oh, you forgot, here's some paper. This is important to understand that kids do what they see and not what we say. So if we come into a classroom and we scream, everybody calm down, that's not going to calm anybody down. So we need to be the model of how to respond based on what we want kids, how we want them responding. That's really hard when we have a kid having a big behavior and destroying our classroom, to remain grounded and to not react to that behavior. But we have to learn ways of doing it. The pause is one of the things that our kids need to learn. So before I react, I'm going to pause. I always tell the story, I have 2 boys at home, and so I had to learn this as I was trying to change my parenting. I had a girl first, and for some reason that worked out really well, and then I had these 2 boys, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. So my boys would be having like Mortal Kombat in the living room, and I didn't want to react to how they were behaving. So I had to practice the skill, where I would smile, and I'd walk over, and I'd say, I see you're having a problem. And at first it sounded really horrible like that, because I was like, oh my gosh, what are they doing? But it taught me how to walk up to them and to be grounded and to say, hey, nobody's saying, I see we have a problem, let's solve this problem. And when you come to kids and you're grounded and you're able to respond like that, they don't run away. And they're ready for you to be with them and to problem solve with them. And generally, as we're talking about brain states, we're not pushing them back down into that bottom brain state where they begin hitting, kicking, spitting at us.
And just like if you want to write down a couple experiences to work on the pause, clean up. You turn off the lights, you stop and pop, and you hold all children accountable to the stopping and the popping. Right? How many of us turn off the lights and we say, everyone, it's time to clean up, and none of them start cleaning up because they haven't paused. So that's a really good experience to teach. And also bubbles. Friends, I want everyone, we're going to blow bubbles, and I want you to not pop them. So teaching that self-control and that pause. There's very specific activities to work on that.
One of the things you want to think about, though, is why you're being triggered by that behavior. What I find is generally when I'm being triggered by a behavior, it's because of fear. I'm afraid of something. I'm afraid that maybe my teaching isn't good enough for this child. Or if I allow this behavior to continue, what is going to happen with the rest of my students? And so we have to be really aware of why we're triggered into reacting instead of responding. And when we can figure out what those triggers are, we're less likely to be reactive to them. I talk a lot about like the difference between love and fear. When we respond with fear, things sound like, what are you thinking? Why would you do that? This kid is going to end up in prison, and he's 4, so that's probably not going to happen. So those are fear-based. When we come from a place of love, we think, what does this child need to be successful? I saw that when he needed that toy, he just bopped that kid against the head. That's not how we get a toy. So I need to stop, help this child who's hurt, and then I need to figure out what does this child need from me so he's not hitting kids when he needs something. Uploading and downloading your calm is another one. Again, you are calm when others are calm. If we say a lot of times as coaches, we know what behavior strategies teachers are using in the classroom based on what the students are doing in the classroom. So when I walk into a classroom and I hear students saying, you're going to get a 10 now, I'm like, okay, so I know what behavior strategy is probably being used in the classroom. What we ask is that you model what you want your students to be doing. That also helps keep you into that executive functioning in the prefrontal cortex. So one of the things that we like to do is use your mirror neurons when you want to help students calm down. So when I have a kid who's in crisis and he's way up here and he's freaking out and I'm over in a safe space with him, we just try to get some eye contact going, and then we simply, it's kind of like yawning. You know, when you yawn, everybody yawns.
Someone cries, I cry.
Yeah, our office.
Yes.
Those are those mirror neurons being activated. And so this is just one simple way that when you have a kid in crisis, instead of saying, calm down, we just help them by helping activate those mirror neurons. And when you see this happen, it's hilarious. Like you'll be sitting there with a kid and just be like, and all of a sudden they're breathing and you're like, so.
I have to tell this story. I had this on Friday. There's a little friend who was unregulated, and I did this with her, and she looks at me and she's like, and I was like, yeah. And then she was walking to line up, and then another friend tripped over her foot, and so she starts, crying. And so I look at this, and I was like, so she goes up and she's like, and then that friend does it, and now it's like a train effect, and they're a room of threes, and so they were all like, and I came back to it, I was like, oh my goodness, never underestimate the power of mirror neurons.
So those are things we can do when kids are in crisis, because we know that when kids are in crisis, they're in that downstairs brain, and so words aren't going to work for them. They can't reason, they can't talk, so we want to use things that are going to help them. One of the other things that we really like to do when a child is in crisis is just to talk to their body and talk to what's happening. You're safe. I'm here with you. I'm here to keep you safe right now. I'm not going to go in and when a child is in crisis and be like, well, you shouldn't go in this box. I'm just going to sit with you and let you know I'm here and I'm going to keep you safe.
Because that's Angela's brain states. The bottom of the brain is asking, am I safe? So that is the only thing you're responding to, is you are safe. I am here to keep you safe. Then if we enter into the cussing or the words, which is actually a higher level of the brain, we're happy when we get up there. They're asking, am I loved? Then we respond out of love, and then when they're in that prefrontal cortex, what can I learn? That's when we do our teaching. So I think that's helped me a lot in shifting how I respond to children's behavior.
But simply kids who trust us calm better with us, and that's how we are as adults. I don't go to somebody who doesn't like me and say, I'm having a crisis, would you walk me through this? I call my best friend, we go grab coffee, she walks me through it, and that's what our kids need. This last one is the hardest for me. I just want to say in the presentation earlier, the comments that were made, all three of them said, you didn't judge me, you didn't judge me, you didn't judge me. And I think that is so important, and it is so difficult. A lot of times the strategies that we use in our early childhood classrooms are, look how Johnny's sitting, I wish you were sitting like that, or don't sit like him, like that's not how you want to sit. Those comments make kids feel judged. When we feel judged, we don't feel good. We move into those bottom brain states, so we want to really stick to noticing. I noticed how nicely you were, I judged again. I noticed you were walking with your hands by your side and your body was safe. I noticed you were sitting on the carpet and your hands were on your lap. You were so safe. So sticking to comments that keep us out of judgment, and like I just did, it's hard. And I fail as a parent all of the time when I'm talking to my children and I recognize it and I try to double back like, oh, I did it again. It takes a lot of practice, but one of the things that helps our students do is be self-aware. When I say you're walking with your hands by your side and you're safe, my student can be aware of what their body is doing, and that's what helps us as we begin to learn self-regulation.
Okay, so now we're going to move into structure. These are rather tangible things you can do. I tend to err on this side a little bit more, so the first thing of structure, and I think we all know this, is always have a plan. So we knew that this little friend was coming to us, right? And there's no escaping it. So we obviously have to meet and we have to create a plan. One of the things that I like to do as a classroom teacher is I literally imagine what's going to happen. So I walked this teacher through, let's just imagine what's going to, because we know, right? He's not going to walk into our classroom and not have any behavior. We know that it's going to happen. There might be a little bit of honeymoon phases, but we know the behavior is coming. I know what the behavior looks like, so I'm going to walk this teacher through it. And I find when I imagine it, which isn't always fun, like getting hit is not always fun, I just find that I'm better able to stay regulated, right? I don't take it personally. I've already imagined this. Our brains function. We think futuristically, so if we've imagined it happening, we're more calm when it does happen. And obviously, hope for the best, but plan for the worst. Like, we want him to be successful, but based on his experience, we know that we might have some rough days ahead. So, one of the first and easiest things to do is your schedule, okay? We have to begin looking at, is our schedules balanced? Are they naturally reinforcing? So when I ask that, balanced means, is it teacher-directed, child-directed, teacher-directed, child-directed? Is it active, passive, active, passive? Like, we want that balance because when we ask a child who's in trauma, any directive could trigger them, right? That's that tiger, that lion we're talking about. But it's really helpful when I say, first we need to go to large group, then we can go outside. But if I say, first we gotta go to large group, then small group, then center, they're like, this isn't worth it. This is hard. So really evaluating that schedule, and then also preparing kids for change, right? We heard that with the bell. There's a loud bell, or let's say we're gonna have a tornado drill today, or, we gotta change the schedule. Make sure you're giving them that warning. And then last but not least is teach them to be flexible. So we call this our bending brain. So I would always have the kids, and it's funny because the first day of school they're actually trying to bend their brains, but that's in the prefrontal cortex. So friends, we're gonna have a bending brain because we have to stay inside because it's raining outside. So that's the first thing. We do have some handouts out here that help you walk through developing a more balanced schedule. Secondly is expectations. This is a hard one because we have a lot of expectations in the day, right? And so we have to be very clear on what my expectations are. If you don't know your expectation, then it's going to be very hard when a child challenges you on that expectation for you to remain assertive. So if I know that every time you're at large group, I need you to sit on your spot, if you have this like wavering expectation of, well, they can lay down or they can, whatever it makes it really hard because then when they go to carpet and they're not sitting, you start to question. Like, is that good enough? Is that not good enough? They made it to carpet. So that creates really unclear messages. So when we're thinking of creating an environment that's safe, I literally have to go through every single part of my day and know exactly what my expectations are. And then with that, being positive in it. Angela has a great activity with stating your expectations.
So you want to state your expectations in a way that creates a vision. I'm talking to that right brain. If I say to you, don't run down the hallway, what does your brain see?
Running.
You see you running. So that's why when we say to kids, don't run, they're like, okay. We want to say, walk with your hands by your side, slowly down the hallway. If I say, don't eat that banana split, what does your head picture? Oh, that delicious banana split. So we want to give a positive and we want to give a visual. You can eat that apple that's on the counter. So when we create those visual expectations, we are talking to the right brain, we're more likely to get what we want out of it.
So I like to tie the expectations and the visual routines together. The visual routines, I've been reading a book on just developing routine in your life, and routines are sacred. And I love when they said that. No one can argue with the routine that is set in your classroom. So if you have a posted arrival routine, it is what it is. So if a child comes up and says, I don't want to go to table, I say, I know that's so hard, you don't want to go to table. Sometimes I don't want to go to table, but the routine says we need to go to table. You can blame it on the routine. The routine does not change. I can't pull that picture out, it's there. It's sacred, and it allows me to not go into punitive measures, right? Like, we have to go to table. It's just, it's table, it says it. I'm sorry, sometimes I don't want to go, but it says it. And so it's just, like, I think putting that, I just think that's such a good, I loved that. Routines are sacred, and so giving yourself permission to hold routine sacred in your classroom, having a step-by-step. I have tons of examples. If you guys need to see them, we have created a visual routine for every single possible experience in your classroom. Arrival routine, write your name, wash your hands, go to table activity, we have it. So if you want to look at that, come up afterwards, we have tons of them. And then lastly, model, teach, and practice. If kids are not going to carpet, if they're not transitioning to carpet, there is nothing wrong with saying my carpet experience is going to be working on that transition. Everyone needs to be successful at giving that positive descriptive feedback. Who you did it, that's our large group lesson for today. Again, that goes into feedback, positive descriptive feedback. So that's like, I like how you're walking with your hands by your sides. I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. Instead of saying, no, don't stop, we're really working on, giving the feedback to what they're doing well. And then I did put in like connectedness within that feedback. The more I'm in classrooms, the more I'm realizing this little bit of touch, that eye contact, what Angela talked about, even that builds connection. Like I can, give that connection to you, even with the feedback of my expectations in the classroom. Okay, so when this little guy is coming to our classroom, so we had to get all visual supports in place, right? We went visual crazy, made sure all our routines were in place. A lot of people gave us feedback that, what about these peers, right? Oh, what do we do when a kiddo has this big behavior? What do we do with the peers? And a lot of people, this is where we go into fear. We're like, they're gonna see this kid having a behavior, so they evacuate the classroom. Or, oh gosh, the peers aren't getting attention, or all of those things. What I learned in my classroom is my peers are making assumptions. No matter what, they're kids, right? Everyone makes assumptions, everyone's making judgments. They're all trying to decide, how do I view this situation over here? So this kid's hitting this teacher, they're all looking, and we often try to ignore it. But instead of ignoring it, let's address it. Oh, friends, we have a friend who's really struggling today, but we can wish them well. Like we create this culture that, they're in red, the zones of regulation. That needs to be your conversation. That's your community. The culture of your classroom is to be open about the emotions children are feeling. Being open about what I'm feeling. There are times where I go into red as an educator. I'll never forget when I can't function in a super loud classroom. And so I taught my kids that right away. It's really hard for me. And I literally, one day it got really loud and I was like, oh, I'm going into red, and I walked to the calm down space. Like, why do the 4-year-olds have to go to the calm down space, but I'm 28 and I don't need to go? There are times I need to go, so I don't yell and I don't raise my hands and I don't do inappropriate behavior. This needs to be modeled. And you know what they did? We had a classroom that cared about each other, and they said, Miss Brittany, we're sorry, we got really loud. We'll be quieter next time. Because you build a classroom that cares about each other. Emotions aren't hidden, behavior isn't hidden. So please talk about it. Talk about the behaviors that are happening in the classroom and that they're not naughty. These kids are not naughty. I can't stand that word. And we'll ask them, are they naughty? No, they're not. They're just struggling today. And we can wish them well.
If we want students coming to us when they're 16 because they're having a hard time, I want them coming to us when they're 4. And I want them coming to us when they're 6. And then they're more likely to come to us when they're 15 and 16 and 22.
Okay, so then the other piece that Angela talked about was we hit to get this toy. If I hit, I get the toy every time, right? So now I've built that neural pathway. I hit, I get the toy. It's awesome. Like, if that works every single time, I'm going to do it every single time until we say, ooh, there's a better way to do that. We can teach these replacement skills. So we know this little guy's coming into our classrooms. We know that we need to prepare him with different skills. So this is what's really hit me is the whole fear and love piece. I'm scared to trigger a behavior, right? So I'm just gonna walk away from it or avoid or help the child avoid that situation. And what I've learned is, oh no, before center time, I'm going to tell that child and prepare that classroom that a friend is going to knock over your tower today. They are. They're going to come and knock over your tower, and you know what? I'm going to give you the strategies of what to do. So it's going to put you into red. You're probably going to get super frustrated because you worked really hard on that tower. But you know what we can do? We can squeeze our fists. We can take deep breaths. We can say, oh, you know what, let's rebuild it together. And then I'm standing there, and so I prep this friend, and I say, okay, walk by, and we're gonna, knock it over. It gets knocked over, and then I'm there with my visual support, like, you got this. You can do this. Way to go. I'm helping you be successful. But we often get scared, right? Because it might cause a behavior, because that's what triggers him every time. But we have to be okay with that. We have to upload and download our Calm and work through that so we can teach them the replacement skills. Okay, so this is my favorite part, right? Because now it's how do we put this all together? So he comes in our room that first day. We have all that love and relationship in place. We have a person at the door. We have, peers at the table that we think he might connect with. We're good. He's loving it. We're good. And all of a sudden, you know it's coming. You can feel the energy. Like, I'm going to tell him to go sit at large group. Oh, that was rough. Like, I had to physically prom to large group. And, I'm starting to feel this energy building, and I know the behavior is going to happen eventually. So, this is where knowing your expectations and knowing that your voice means something is super important. So it's time to line up for recess, and he does not want to line up for recess. So I give him a choice. You can line up on the purple dot or the pink dot. And he says, I don't want to line up. And I said, purple or pink dot. Again, assertive and calm, not punitive. And he goes, I don't want to line up. So I said, okay, then I'm going to choose for you. I need you to line up on the purple dot. And he says, I'm lining up on the pink dot. I was like, oh, this is where you question yourself, right? Because you're like, I said purple, and he's saying pink, and so I'm going through what every person goes through, but I'm like, buddy, I said purple. So I'm going to help you to purple. Then immediately when I went in to help, he shut down, started running around the room, throwing items. So then, of course, because my job is to keep him safe and others safe, I did have to go into a restraint. The restraint was very physical, so then I went into safe space, which is just me putting him in a very simple space that has nothing that can be used against me, and I go down at his level, and I say, I'm going to keep you safe. And he is saying things like, no one could love someone like me. Why did they kick me out? I am such a terrible boy. I'm such a bad boy. And this is emotional, you guys. I literally cried. And I think he was kind of like, and he had just tore apart blinds and all of this stuff and slamming filing cabinets. But my whole job is, I'm here to keep you safe. And then you start to see what is beautiful science is we went from physical to emotional, and he melted right into my lap. And he started crying, and I cried with him, and I said, I love you so much. And I enter right back into that restorative relationship practice, because nothing you said, nothing you did to me, nothing you did to this classroom changes the fact that I still love you. And I'm going to let you know that. And that is so powerful. We can't ever forget to build that restorative relationship piece, because he needs to know that love is unconditional. Then you guys are probably asking, right, this is where we're like, but you still have an expectation. Okay, so I've moved up the brain. I've gone from, is he safe? Yes. Is he loved? Now he's loved. So now I'm going to dance back. Okay, so I went into, am I safe? So that's a whole different ballgame. Okay, I had him line up. That was my expectation, but then I went into crisis. And you can see it, you guys. You can see the difference between a kid who is just saying no and a kid who's in crisis. When you're in crisis, now my only job is to keep you safe. Once you're calm and you're in green, now I'm entering back into the structure. So I went into love, and now I'm going back into structure. So I say, are you ready to line up on purple? And he was like, walks right over to purple and goes outside. That was about a 90-minute incident. It went from 90 minutes the first day, about 40 minutes the second day, 15 minutes the third day, 4 minutes the fourth day, and we've completely eliminated the behavior for 10 weeks. Okay? But he does have incidences where he has a very traumatic home life, and the behavior will come back up, and we have to repeat. So that's how you take it full circle. That's the whole story of how we balance in and out of love and structure. Okay, yes, and chart that has all your emotions on it, and these sensory bottles that are like beautiful and like super pretty. And I soon realized when I put a child who was in crisis in that space, it was devastating because the sensory bottle went to my head, and everything got ripped off the wall, ripped to pieces. And then what do? I get unregulated because I work super hard, or I bought that for $30 with my own money. And so I really want you to recognize that a calm down space is for a child who's in optimal development. They are able to say, oh, my friend just took my toy and I'm frustrated, so I'm going to go to the calm down space. The safe space needs to be a place where I keep you safe. There is nothing that can be used against me. There's nothing that can be used against you. It is literally, I mean, anything. They can pound on something, kick something. As long as they're not self-harming, I remove all items out of there. And let's see. Yeah.
Okay. And then restorative practices, Brittany touched upon. It's so important that we go back with this particular little kiddo after one of his incidents. He sat with his teacher, and at rest time, he said to his teacher, will you tell me that again? Tell me that I'm loved. And so she sat there with him at nap time and said, you're loved. You are loved. Because he needed to hear that over and over again. That love has to be unconditional, despite how big my behavior was. Even after I destroyed your beautiful sensory area, that you still love me. That all of those things are replaceable, but you are not. And we all need that in our life. Whether we're 4 or 93, we need to know that we're loved unconditionally, and that is what we heal. And if we want our students to heal, we need to also believe that about ourselves. Because you're going to leave and you're going to be like, I heard all these great things at this trauma practice, and put them into place, and you're going to get back and you're going to lose your temper, or you're going to get really upset at a kid. And you have to give yourself that grace as well to say, I can make mistakes too, and tomorrow I can do better. And that's where we all have to be. Like, as this is a journey, and trauma-informed practice is a journey of learning and understanding the students that we're working with, but it's really a journey of learning and understanding ourselves. And within that, we have to give ourselves grace to learn and to grow.
And I love us. I'm going to put my husband on the spot. My husband's a pretty gentle human being. But we tell stories. Like, there's nothing wrong with coming to a classroom with an experience you had the night prior and let the kids talk about it. And so I get home, our furnace broke. My husband was upset, threw his phone on the floor. Sorry, Brett. And then I went to school the next day and I said, friends, guess what? My husband went into red last night because he threw his phone on the floor and he broke it. So then I got my video camera out and I said, what strategies could he have used instead of throwing his phone? And so they all went around and they were like, oh, he should have squeezed his fist. Oh, why didn't you guys go up in bed and just cuddle and stay warm? And so, like, bring it. Like, I love that we can use our mistakes to teach. I did raise my voice and I did, and I said, oh, friends, I'm sorry. I went into red and I yelled, and they were like, it's okay, we forgive you. Because you build that culture, like, that's okay. Like, I'm going to be open and honest about my emotions and how I feel, because we come to school unregulated. If we don't have our routine in place and something got missed, use those things to bring your classroom community together. So we do have a few minutes